Okay, I'd like to call the Finance Committee for the Board of Trustees, Northern Michigan University, into order. I'd like to note that the members present, we have Bridget LaPointe-Durham. We have ex-officio member Steve Young, and ex-officio member Barack Tesman, and myself, Greg Sepinen. Chair Alexa Hart wasn't able to join the meeting, has proved myself to be the designee for the chair at this meeting. And I'd like to also note that Trustee Holmquist is excused absence also. The start of the agenda will be with the internal audit. And at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Vice President Gavin Lee.
All right, thank you, Greg. Welcome, everybody. The first item on the agenda is the Audit Open Issues Report. We have five items on the report this time. I'm filling in for Jill Compton, who couldn't be here today. She's out ill today. So first item is our CISO policies. Internal audit with the CISO to review technology policies required by regulation. Updates are required to comply with new federal laws. The CISO drafted a new student financial data policy that will be distributed for feedback. Was part of the response that was given in the early part of the audit. That feedback was provided, and a policy was approved by the regulatory deadline to meet federal requirements. The second item, ADA accessible communication. Internal audit found that MU generally complies with accessible communication standards. However, training is limited to some of the employment categories. So Joe was working with some areas to try to expand that training across campus to ensure that we're actually going beyond the standards that are required. And she was serving in 2 roles over the last year and a half, and so she got a little behind, but Dale Kapla agreed to take that on. And he'll be working with the campus to address both the specific training issues and greater accessibility goals for the university. FCC licensing controls. FCC process can be enhanced with a mechanism to notify the persons responsible, their supervisors, of pending deadlines. We already had a well-established database of what licenses we have and the due dates. The one thing we wanted to do is create an automated system where they get automated notifications so that they're fully aware that we have filing deadlines due on our licenses, and those, our radio, TV, as well as EAN, FCC licenses. And so we were able to put that information into a database that would do automatic notifications to the proper areas to ensure we're always in full compliance. That has been completed. The fourth one on the list, the DOE, Department of Education, third-party service agreement guidance. The Department of Education issued a Dear Colleague letter requiring additional controls and reporting requirements for third-party contracts. The President's Compliance Committee has the responsibility of implementing this new guidelines. I think the feds got over their skis on this one. They have not actually completed those guidelines, and so the committee will comply with that once we get final guidance on what those are. Most of this was originally put in place with regard to third-party lenders, and looked like they were trying to do a great expansion of that. I think they're reviewing what to expand that to. But once we receive the final guidance, we'll have to adopt our internal processes to ensure we're in compliance. So that one's in process. And then PCI compliance, payment card industry compliance. The PCI rules now require specific training for entities that process high volume or high dollar amount of credit card transactions. NMU does not have consistent requirement for that training. It was part of the review. We do it for high volume areas. They've been implemented. Both the controller and the CISO agree that expanding training beyond those specific high-volume areas is really warranted. You have Jamie here, who's part of that, as well as John Mara, our CISO. This is in process, and a campus-wide training module has been identified and will be rolled out to managers on a risk-based schedule. And so that completes the open issues.
I'd like to hear a motion to accept the report as written.
I make that motion.
Okay, thank you, Trustee LaPointe Dunham, and it's open for discussion if you have any questions.
No questions.
I have none, so we'll vote on it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That was easy.
All right, thank you.
Next
Thank
one.
you. Trustee Sepinen. Next, we have the proposed audit plan. And so what Jill looks at is risk areas identified and potential risk areas identified. She uses, national standards as well as, recent incidences to put together an annual audit plan for the university from an internal audit perspective. There's a regular review. First on the list is payroll, because that's one where, you have a lot of dollars flowing through the university on payroll, so she does regular audits in that area. There's FTC, Federal Trade Commission safeguard rules. People with student data require special training regarding protection of information. They're working on that to ensure that the protections are in place. Credit card payments, that's really just a normal audit process that we have on a regular basis. Jill gets involved as well as Jamie here regularly in reviewing the process and if there's any changes that are necessary. Third-party vendor contracts, data controls, cyber insurance law require training of managers with credit card processing and having their staff go through training. John Mara worked with Jill on identifying a training solution that would work for those staff, and they've identified that it's called Vector Training Solutions, that any staff that are doing credit card processing will have to go through that training. And she's going to monitor to ensure that that's in place. A new one that came up, and that's with regard to several incidences this year, the lithium battery safety. There's a couple of fires on campuses this year, luckily not on ours. It was at Central Michigan University, as well as Lake State University. And it has to do, one of them had to do with electric bikes and the lithium batteries in electric bikes. The other one had to do with lithium batteries in robotics labs. And so she's starting a process to review to ensure we have proper safeguards with regards to any items that may have lithium batteries in it and how we want to handle those as a policy across the university. Again, that's it's a big risk protection on the fire side of things. Concur invoice and credit card processing. Again, that's a normal review that Jill does on an annual basis, and she works with Jamie Beauchamp to ensure that the settlement process and processing of invoices have proper controls and review in place. And that's her proposed audit plan for 2024.
Thank you, Mr. Leach. I'd like to hear a motion to accept the audit plan as written. And I look at our trustee who's in the hot seat. And
I make a motion to accept the plan as written.
I'll support. Any discussion or questions? I have none. Thank you, Mr. Leach.
Thank you, Trustee Sepinen.
And now we turn it over to Jamie Beauchamp, and we go ahead, who's controller, for the next part of the agenda, which is the external audit.
Okay, thank you. We have Bill Sheltrow here with Anderson Tackman to give some preliminary comments on the audit, and then I will go through some of the financial results of the stations.
Make sure both your microphones are on, okay? Just in case. I think there's a switch on the back. So.
It's on, I think, isn't it?
The young man came and turned it on, yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you. So, Thank you for having us. I'm from Anderson Tackman and Company. We appreciate the opportunity to meet and discuss the results of the June 30th, 2023 audit for the WNMU TV and WNMU FM audits that are required for the CPB qualifications. The audit was able to be completed as scheduled this year. We have issued, or will be issuing, an unqualified opinion. There were no audit scope issues under generally accepted audit standards. We found no departures from GASB or the Governmental Accounting Standards Board accounting rules. CBB reporting and attestation is intended to be completed within the extended time parameters, likely by the end of next week. For the audit approach related to this audit, we used a risk-based audit approach. We updated systems documentation and performed risk-based assessments. For efficiency's sake, we performed test of controls for cash disbursements, but for all other transaction categories related to the audit, we applied substantive-based audit techniques. The year-end fieldwork and financial statements, again, for the overall conduct, the timetable was adhered to for fieldwork with similar starting and completion times as in previous years, with the exception of the COVID years. Management and employee assistance were appropriate and helpful. We encountered no significant items relating to the audit administration for the current year. We've also issued in addition, or plan to issue in addition to the audit report, a report to management. And in that report, there are no issues that need addressing from previous years' audits, and we find no material weaknesses. Additionally, there's a communications with those charged with governance that is required under Audit Codification 260. There are no exceptional items to report. We can highlight the importance of the OPEB and retirement footnotes, and the lease accounting footnotes are listed in there, and we would encourage members of the committee and the board at large to take note of those. No significant issues, nothing out of the ordinary there, just standard disclosures. That's it.
How's that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, so now I'll give a brief summary of the financial results of the TV and FM stations for fiscal year '23. So first off, I would just mention that beginning on page 2 through 13 of the document you have, as the page numbers noted on the bottom of the report pages, the management discussion and analysis for each station. I won't go through them here, but I would just recommend that you read those at your leisure. It's basically a narrative description of the financial results of the statements in more layman-type terms for ease of understanding.
Jamie, one thing that I highlighted was on page 3, non-current liabilities, and I saw the huge fluctuation from 2022 to 2023, and I know COVID is in there. Is this part of the same issue of the COVID money?
That is, most of that is related to the MEPSers, the reduction.
Oh, the MEPSers.
Reduction
Okay.
in MEPSers. Yeah, and, you know, as you remember, like at the university as a whole, that reduction, and so then you'll see the effect here on on both stations.
So that's paying off of the pension
Yeah.
liabilities. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so then on to, I would refer you to page 17 and 19 of your document for the TV station. Page 17 is the statement of net position or balance sheet for the TV station. You'll notice at the end of '23, total assets ended at just a little over $6 million, which is about a $560,000 increase over last year. And the main items there for that change are in the other assets line, and that was due to paying the CPB dues prior to year end. So we had a prepaid asset for that this year as compared to last year. And then the capital assets line increased by about $186,000. And that would be, that are the additions for the Studio A in the TV section. So there was a new set that was put into there and an electrical upgrade into there with some other minor items. And then with also with the depreciation taken in the year netted out to that $186,000 increase in capital assets. Then a little further down, total liabilities, just under 95,000, a decrease of about 167,000. That there kind of, Greg, too, is where you're seeing, you know, the liability, reduction in the liabilities, and as I mentioned, that's all, pretty much all the MEPSR's reduction. And then at the very bottom, total net position, 5.9 million. So that was about a $760,000 increase for the year. And as you noted, just in the line just above that, the unrestricted net position increased by about 581,000 for the year. So a solid balance sheet for the TV station for this year. Then page 19 is the statement of revenues, expenses, changes in net position, or the income statement for the TV station. You see the total operating revenues ended about 907,000, mostly flat from last year. The one thing I would mention in that other grant line, in the previous year, we had received some money from the state of Michigan to promote the Michigan Learning Channel. And this year, in '23, they didn't give the funding for that. So that's why you see the decrease there. Expenses, total operating expenses, about 1.5 million. So that was a decrease of about 219,000 from the last year. The main items there are in the programming and production line. That's where some of the MEPSR's adjustments show up there in the programming and production. And then in the management and general line, a little bit further down, decreased by 93,000. And that there is just a reduction in the calculated indirect costs that go into the station's expenses. And that's a calculated amount based on total operating expenses. So as expenses go down, those costs would go down. The non-operating revenues expenses a little bit further down ended at just under 1.4 million. So that was about a $100,000 increase from the prior year. But a couple items just to note there, the general appropriations for NMU, from NMU line, increased there by 288,000. And that is mostly the funding related to the studio, the new set in the studio and the electrical upgrade. And then the Federal Paycheck Protection Program, so the PPP loan that we had during the COVID time. So in last year's statements, when the federal government forgave that loan, so you didn't have to pay it back, it had to be recorded as revenue in the prior year. So going forward now, you won't see that in there anymore. So that came to the increase in that position of just under $760,000 for a strong year there. One thing I would mention with that $760,000, that includes the adjustment related to MEPSR's. So if you were to back out that effect of that, the TV station still had an increase in position of the year of about $606,000. So it still had a very strong year. So, and then next I'll go to page 18, which is the balance sheet for the FM station. That there you'll see total assets a little over $1 million. That stayed very consistent with the prior year. A little bit of an increase there, and just timing, there's a little increase in cash at the end of the year there. Moving down, total liabilities, $157,000. So there was a decrease of $77,000 and from the prior year, and there again, that's the reduction of MEPSR's. So at the bottom, total net position, $875,000, which came to be an increase of $219,000 over the last year. And again, I'd point out the unrestricted line again rose by about $230,000 from the prior year. Page 20 then, finally, the income statement for the FM station. Total revenue is $169,000, and that's just right on par from the prior year. Operating expenses decreased by $127,000. And then non-operating revenues expenses, you'll see at about $745,000. That was a decrease of $123,000. And that mostly was, again, you'll see that line for the PPP loan related to the FM station, with the revenue being recorded in the prior year. So increase of $219,000. That one, again, had the with the MEPSR's adjustment in there, if you take that out again, the increase in net position for the FM station was still about 105,000 for the year. So with that, solid years for both stations. I would say they're in a good position going forward.
Any questions?
No questions.
Okay, I assume we're ready for a motion.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear a motion to to accept the draft audit of the WNMU TV and WNMU FM financial statements as written.
I make a motion to accept the report as written.
And I support. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes, and we go on to our next, which is the contract extension.
Okay.
Yeah, just on the contract extension, we're looking to extend our audit engagement with our annual financial statement auditors, Raymond Robson, for 5 years. They're a solid firm. They've performed thorough audits, sound thorough audits, and they've had a great leadership team assigned to our audits on a regular basis. Another important factor that taken into consideration is when we call them throughout the year on potential entries and to ensure compliance, we don't get extra billings on anything that we ever call. So I think that's, you know, indicative of the service that we get from the firm. So with that, I think, you know, we're looking to extend the agreement. We think what the fees that they've proposed are in line with what we're seeing throughout the state. And Jamie, maybe you can mention, you know, the audit standards are pretty much to retain firms, but over time change partners at the firms.
Yeah, I would say a few items there. Just overall, the industry has continued to move and promote longer-term relationships with auditors for consistency, and then being able to give more educated advice to their clients. They have noted, you know, reduction in audit quality at times with changing over, with them learning the client, pressures on the staff, you know, the client staff. Other Michigan universities we've noted are staying longer with their auditors. We've kind of checked into them, and many of them are 12 plus years, and some 20 plus years being with the same firm. So some of the more individual type things, they've had a strong history of providing good service to us, always on time, in accordance with their plans and their requirements. As Gavin mentioned, very perceptive, responsive to questions that we have throughout the year. They do have an option also of rotating partners, you know, to provide the, fresh look perspective of the financial statements. They're very proactive with coming to us with new accounting standards, you know, just to make sure we're getting those timely and implementing them in a timely fashion. So I think that's really it there. I think just with their strong history with us and the pricing this year, there was a little bit of a bump in the first year, mainly because in the prior contract we had with them, they had proposed and we accepted it prior to COVID and the more recent inflationary pricing pressures and that. So there's a little bit of increase there, and then the remaining 4 years of the contract would be around 4% each year. So I think with the modest price increases and the strong history that they've had with us, we would recommend.
And the rotating eyes on the audit.
And the rotating, yep, they do have, we can do that, so.
Any questions? I'll entertain a motion to go ahead and recommend to the board approval of the external audit contract extension.
Sure, I make a motion to recommend that the board approve the external auditor contract extension.
And I'll support that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bill, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Okay, Gavin, back to you.
All right, next on the agenda, we have just a budget update. You have the key indicators in front of you. First item, state appropriation, of course, is on target. They established that, and it's on target with our budget, about 4.9% above the prior year. When we look at tuition and fees compared to budget, we're pretty much right on target with where we set the budget. We're about $100,000 ahead, but that can fluctuate as still, even after the semester, as students do retro withdrawals and other things that occur. So that one is pretty much in line with where we set our budget for the year. Dining services is having a strong fall semester. They're about $400,000 over budget, or about 6% above budget, and 7.6% above last year. That's due to higher occupancy. The mix of the plans has a big effect too, because more and more students went towards a more expensive platinum plan because it gives them a lot of dining dollars that they can use at the different venues on campus, and then the meal rate adjustment. Residence hall revenue is about $400,000 above budget this year, and that's really due primarily to the occupancy in our residence halls. We're pretty full this year, and as you can tell, if you go down one column to the residence hall occupancy, out of 2,598 beds, we have 23 beds open, which is 99.1% full. So we're pretty full in the residence halls. And apartment revenues right now are trending at about $100,000 above budget. And again, if you look at the line below, apartment occupancy, we have 501 beds available and 500 beds filled. So about as tight as we can get there. We do have a little bit of flexibility left in there by making some of the singles doubles, but it's pretty tight now in that area. So overall, we're on target or slightly above budget, particularly in the auxiliary budgets, which include auxiliary operations and residence life. So that's pretty much the budget update as to where we're at to start the year. Again, we just approved the budget back in October, but this is good news so far.
We don't need a motion on this, but do you
No.
have any questions at all?
Just information only on that one.
Okay, we're good.
Okay. And then just a facilities update. Again, I just gave you an update in October. But we've had some things change as we've had bids come in. But Jacobetti Complex, even though we finished and opened and got things going, we have punch list items. So as the semester ends next week, we'll have about 20 contractors returning to complete the punch list. The project will be done within budget, but you always have some items you just didn't get to, but it's okay to run everything. But when students clear out, that allows them to go back in and just do finishing touches on some items in the building.
So if I understand you correct, there's no additional cost. This is just something we were waiting for the right time.
Yeah, whatever costs there may be, it'll be minor, and it's within the original budget of the project. So before we close it out, but we need to make sure they clear all those punch lists before we dismiss them on it. So we're going through on the Hardin Hall project. We did a bid review, and these initial bids look like they're going to be higher. They're higher than what the construction manager had estimated for the budget. So they're modifying and changing the scope of the work, and they're going to reissue 6 of the 20 bid packages to try to bring that project back in line. We don't expect this to create any delay in the process. And these things happen when you get some higher bids. You review it, you look at possible changes. In this case, we're looking at changing some of the scope of the work, and we'll be reissuing those packages and hope to bring those costs more in line with the original budget. Again, we're working with Rockford on that right now, but as of now, we believe everything will stay on schedule throughout the process. So.
When are those new bids going out?
And in January, beginning of January, they'll go back out on the 6 of the 20 bid packages are going to be sent out. So 14 of them were within range, and so we're sending 6 of them out for another look at it. So.
I have no more questions.
Okay. The science complex, we've been going through that process. I think the bids recently went out. Jim, did they hit? Okay. So now, next week through January 29th. The construction manager believes that one will be above budget, so we'll have to take a look at that when the bids come in, just based on recent trends. You know, one of the issues facing the industry in the UP, at least, you have the Sioux Locks projects. It's gathering a lot of work over into that area, which makes, you know, the cost of doing these projects higher to retain workers in this area. So that's a big federal project over there. So it creates some challenges for us, but we'll believe we'll be able to move forward on that and work through the bid process and identify what we can to continue to move forward, which we think we will and be on time. We may have to make some adjustments on that budget, though. Vandeman Arena, demolition has already started on it, so it's in full process. We do expect to be completed on schedule for volleyball to be able to start up in the fall. And that one, we're on budget, and we plan to be on target with our timelines. So that one is in full force now. You know, the ice rink, we did complete that, and many of you have seen the games going on TV or in person. I think things have worked out quite well there. TV6 has given us some good news coverage on the changes. They happen to be here in the room. And so I think that's all gone quite well. One issue I just wanted to bring to the attention is somehow our basketball floor that we move in and out of that arena got some water damage this year. And so we had to move our basketball games temporarily into our practice gyms. And so that's caused us some headaches, as well as caused the team some headaches. But we've been working with Horner Floors, and we think we'll have that resolved by the end of December here. They did a review of it, and they think they can repair it and have it up and running again for the end of December. So we're pretty happy. We're worried about that we don't want to be down the whole year, and they believe they found the solution to be able to get that up and running again. I know there's probably been some news about it or talk about it, so I just wanted to make sure everybody aware of what was going on. So.
Was that covered by insurance?
We're going to wait and see what the final costs are. You have to be above $100,000 to be able to start collecting on that. So, and then the Superior Dome turf replacement project, the bid's out and awarded to AstroTurf. The project will be next summer, right, Kathy?
Yeah, it does start on June 24th.
Yeah.
Completed August 9th.
Yeah, and so that one was within budget, so I don't need to talk further on that one. So we look like we're good to go there, and
We were thinking about $2 million.
yes, so we'll be within that budget target. So, so that's all the projects right now going on, and again, we're hopeful to hear by the end of the year from the governor's office on the College of Business. We believe she'll be signing that, but. More to come on that issue. So,
Any questions at all?
and that concludes the facilities update.
Okay. Last item is the temporary liquor license.
Yeah, we have 5 temporary liquor licenses. We have the lip sync battle in Forrest Roberts Theater in January. The main event held by NMU Hospitality Management in April. Senior show reception in May in the DeVos Art Center. And we have Dancing with Our Stars in the Hedgecock Atrium in May, and the Drag Cabaret in Thomas Fine Arts. And that would be held the end of May. And so those are the 5 where we need temporary liquor license approval.
I would like to hear a motion that the board approve, that we recommend that the board approve the temporary liquor license.
I make a motion to recommend that the board approve the temporary liquor licenses.
I'll support. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Gavin. And that concludes the business of the Finance Committee, and we are adjourned.